humans. Lieutenant Administrator Narzer frowned at his datapad. Specifically, Earth suburban females. Correct, the intake drone buzzed. Demographic classification, 40 to 55 years. Predominantly Caucasian. Most list occupation as, the drone paused, clearly confused, community advocate, event planner, or simply, mom. Narzer blinked his lateral eye. No military ranking? No. Though one claims to have chaired the HOA board for 6 consecutive years without internal scandal. Narzer rubbed his temple ridge. Assign them to Dorm Block D. No armed guards necessary. Let the junior recruits handle it. The drone floated off, unconcerned. Block D was typically reserved for low-risk beings. Herbivores. Pacifists. Space poets. It had been 2 standard rotations since the Karens arrived, and already the base had changed. Gone was the sterile gray lighting. Somehow, they'd reprogrammed the LUM panels to emit a warmer, candlelight glow. Faux welcome mats appeared outside their doors. The walls were freshly adorned with motivational quotes in looping cursive fonts. Live, laugh, conquer. A rogue security camera caught one woman, Margot, commandeering a maintenance droid and teaching it the correct angle for a full-body mirror install. Margot Pearson didn't look like a threat. Her hair was tastefully highlighted. Her blouse was floral but firm. She smiled easily and apologized frequently, but never for the same thing twice. She walked the base like she'd already owned it in a past life. And the guards? They never stood a chance. Private Tharn was the first to crack. She said I looked tired, he confessed in the barracks, trembling. Then she asked if I enjoyed working in a place like this. Did you detain her? His squad mate asked. No, Tharn whispered. I reorganized the break room. She said it would improve morale. She brought scones. Lieutenant Narzer, increasingly annoyed by the reports, decided to confront the matter himself. Margot met him in the repurposed mess hall, now sporting linen tablecloths and an alien fern centerpiece that definitely wasn't standard decor. You must be Mr. Narzer, she said, extending a hand. I've heard so much about you. Let's talk about the lack of basic hygiene enforcement here. This is not a resort, Narzer snapped. Oh, I know, Margot smiled, tilting her head. But even prisons have standards. That fungus in your filtration vent? It's lawsuit-worthy. Just a thought. He frowned. What lawsuit? Well, she said sweetly, folding her hands, you did kidnap citizens of a sovereign planet. There's a little thing we call wrongful detainment back on Earth. I'm sure your empire has similar regulations. Unless, of course, you're the lawless type. Her voice was syrup. Her eyes were razors. Narzer found himself nodding just to escape. Later in his quarters, he filed a formal request. Recommend immediate relocation of human subjects to high-security outpost. Potentially manipulative. Danger unclear. The request was denied. Earth was considered a Class C threat at best. No nuclear retaliation within galactic timeframes. No mind tech. No mass telepathy. Just humans. And they didn't fear humans. Yet, elsewhere, Margot met with the others in what had once been an unused cargo bay. Now it was a community center, complete with circular seating and a refreshments table stocked with alien cookies and 3 questionable teapots. They've upgraded our rooms, said Cheryl, beaming. I asked for temperature control. Now I can sleep at 72 degrees. I requested a calming wall mural, Nancy added, pointing to a projection of a Terran beachscape. They gave me 5. I didn't even ask twice. Margot sipped her tea and nodded. Progress. Now let's discuss Phase 2. They leaned in, hair perfectly coiffed, eyes sharp. We've softened them. Demoralized their frontline staff. Redirected their AI's cleaning subroutines to organize pantry shelves. They think we're harmless. They don't know, whispered Karen the Younger, that I used to run event security for the Dallas Metro Chamber Gala. They don't know I once got a grown man fired for ruining my espresso shot, said Janice. They don't know, Margot said, that we asked nicely. She opened her clutch purse and tapped a concealed corner. A tiny blue light blinked, then vanished. Far away, in Earth's orbit, a dormant satellite pulsed once, then unlocked something beneath the Atlantic Trench. None of the Karens flinched. They sipped tea, smiled, waited. By the end of the week, Base Corthaxis 9 had its first formal complaint box. It had been installed without approval. It was full by noon. "I don't understand," Lieutenant Narzer barked during the morning briefing. "Why are our junior staff requesting transfers?" "They say the humans make them feel inadequate," mumbled Ensign Troll. One mentioned something called emotional guilt tripping. Another said they were forced into a vision board workshop. He hasn't spoken since. Narzer stormed into Dorm D. Margot was waiting. She was in a power walk outfit now, athletic leggings, headband, and a clipboard. Behind her, 2 Karens were auditing a sanitation drone. A third was scrubbing the base's logo off a wall, replacing it with Earth-style calligraphy. Excellence is expected. Narzer waved his claw. "This ends now." "Of course," Margot said agreeably. "Would you like to speak to my manager?" "You are the manager." "No, dear," she said, smiling like the sun. "I'm the assistant regional coordinator." Narzer froze. "That's not a thing." Margot tapped her comlink. "Patch him in." A voice, deep, gravelly, and unmistakably human, came through. "Y'all bother my girls?" the voice asked. Narzer blinked. "Identify yourself." Colonel Victor Bearclaw McNamara, retired. Head of Earth's Civilian Special Contingency Reserves. "You poked the HOA hornet nest, son. Hope your exit policy's up to date." The line cut. Margot clapped once. "Now then, shall we continue our inspection of your disciplinary logs?" We found several discrepancies. Back in orbit, aboard the Empire's remote monitoring hub, several analysts watched the footage with growing concern. "These humans have no command structure," one said. "They're gaining loyalty from our personnel," another muttered. "They made our death WIRM cry," said a third. "We need to warn the council." "But it's just women." The screen showed Margot organizing a protest over insufficient latte froth. One alien tried to run. 3 others were cornered into a group therapy session. One was asked about his childhood. He sobbed. "They're weaponizing feelings," someone whispered. That night, Margot stood on the open observation deck. The stars above blinked like they knew something no one else did. She looked peaceful, calm, a suburban warrior in the eye of a storm. Lieutenant Narzer approached her carefully. He hadn't slept. His tentacles twitched. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice cracking. Margot smiled without teeth. "You took us because you thought we were weak, old, past our prime, unimportant." She turned toward him. "But do you know what happens when you ignore women like us back home?" "Aye. They bring cities to their knees with nothing but a Facebook group and a half-price bottle of Chardonnay. You're destabilizing an entire station." "No, sweetheart," she said gently. "We're just improving it." She stepped forward, placing a neatly folded petition into his shaking hands. "Signed by every alien staff member who now prefers our management style." He stared. One signature glowed. His. Margot patted his arm. "I'm proud of you." Above, Earth's moon begins to blink. Not visibly, not to the eye, but to the right frequency. It's humming. Captain Vrall of the Mazdor Death Guard had seen horrors that twisted lesser minds into paste. Acid rains of Mordax Prime. The crystallized cannibals of Sector Vix-T. The vacuum scream of a dying moon as it collapsed under its own political corruption. Yet nothing prepared him for her. She was 5'6", wore lavender perfume, and had a complaint folder. The human named Cheryl stepped into the interrogation chamber with poise. She placed her floral tote bag on the steel table, zipped it open, and removed a stack of papers, tabbed, highlighted, annotated. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she began, smiling. "But we do need to address your appalling return policy." Vrall blinked his topmost eye. "This is not a marketplace." Cheryl tilted her head. "Then explain why my fellow passengers were told we'd be relocated to a peaceful processing colony, only to arrive here, crammed into rooms the size of discount hotel suites, served food with the consistency of wet mulch, and forced to navigate hallways that reek of unwashed droid coolant." Vrall's claw hovered over the alert beacon. His training said detain, disorient, dominate. But his instincts told him he'd already lost. You may not recognize this, Cheryl continued, sliding a form forward. But this is an Earth legal instrument called a class action lawsuit. See these little boxes? Each signature represents someone who now holds your empire responsible for trauma via hostile ambience. Behind the mirrored wall, 2 alien guards watched in growing horror as Cheryl pulled out a second form labeled, "Request for Apology" in writing. "Should we intervene?" one asked. The other stared. She brought baked goods. Indeed, she had. A tray of banana bread sat near the door, untouched, but radiating cultural intimidation. Elsewhere on the base, the conflict deepened. Margot stood before the central logistics node, her hair pinned in a military-perfect twist. Her tone was clipped, businesslike. "I requested extra pillow support 4 days ago." The logistics droid beeped. "Request denied. Subject comfort does not override inventory allocation policy." Margot's eyes narrowed with the calm of a brewing storm. "I see. And who do I speak to when policy contradicts reasonable human expectations?" "There is no designated representative for complaints." She inhaled slowly. "Oh honey, there is now." She leaned in. "Let me explain how this is going to work. You're going to file an override. You're going to cite Protocol V4, Biologic Welfare Consideration. I read your manuals. I know your firmware. And if you don't do it, I'm going to stand here and ask you why you won't. Every cycle, loudly, with visual aids, in front of every species on this base." The droid processed that for a moment. "Override request submitted." "See," Margot said sweetly. "Progress." The Karens began to fan out. Janice hosted a workplace boundaries workshop that left 5 guards in a fetal position questioning their childhoods. Beverly led a fashion intervention that resulted in half the alien staff voluntarily abandoning their standard issue armor for pastel robes and footwear labeled emotionally breathable. Karen the Younger taught an emotional resilience class in the cryo chamber. One alien wept for the first time in 70 years after hearing a quote from Oprah. At first, the Empire dismissed the changes as harmless human rituals. But then supply chains began to fail. Drone maintenance backlogs appeared out of nowhere. AI scheduling systems reported unauthorized wellness days. Security footage revealed an alarming increase in alien personnel doing yoga in corners of the base. In her quarters, Margot ran simulations. The holographic display flickered as her plan unfolded in miniature. Staff morale crumbling, base command credibility deteriorating, and civilian workers transferring themselves out en masse. She logged a new entry. Log entry. Suburban Fury Phase 2. Objective: destabilize through reform. Method: bureaucratic overwhelm, emotional subjugation, and unsolicited feedback loops. ETA to collapse, 11 days. She sipped mint tea and smirked. They had only wanted refunds. Now they were about to collect the galaxy. In the Empire's high-orbit relay station, the central commander of Sector Theta reviewed the footage. On-screen, Margot addressed a room of alien cadets about intentional living, while casually reprogramming a drone in the background. Another screen showed Cheryl distributing color-coded task charts for the base staff, labeled Accountability Buddies. Another showed Janice staring silently at a Goran warlord until he nervously apologized for speaking without permission. "We underestimated them," the commander said, tail twitching. His subordinate nodded grimly. "They're recalibrating our entire morale infrastructure." "Dispatch reinforcements," the commander ordered. "Send the Mazdor 2nd Division." "And if they fail?" The commander exhaled. "Then we send a negotiator." The second wave arrived with fanfare. Mazdor soldiers stormed the base corridors in perfect formation, gleaming armor, phase weapons charged, boots clicking in sync. They found the common room converted into a spa. Beverly greeted them in a silk robe. "You'll need to remove your boots before entering. We've just had the floor steam cleaned." Captain Groth stepped forward. "Where is your leader?" "I'll call her," Beverly said, tapping her comlink. "But she's meditating." "You'll need to use a respectful tone." Groth scoffed. "We are not here for tea parties." Margot entered through double doors behind a cloud of scented mist. She wore a blazer over yoga pants, wielding both a clipboard and terrifying calm. "You're late," she said. Groth frowned. "Late for what?" "Your scheduled orientation," she replied. "Follow me." He did. Because despite himself, he wanted to know what came next. The orientation was an hour-long session in a repurposed command room filled with scented candles, ergonomic chairs, and a giant holographic chart labeled, "How to be less hostile in hostile environments." Groth endured 15 minutes before losing patience. "This is manipulation," he roared. Margot raised an eyebrow. "Do you feel manipulated?" "Aye. Would you like to discuss that with your accountability partner?" He blinked. She slid him a plush alien ergonomic journal and a pen. Groth didn't scream. He wrote, "Not all Karens use charm." Karen the Younger had adopted another tactic entirely: chaos through contradiction. She filed conflicting maintenance reports. She requested warm meals, then returned them for being too warm. She gave out surveys and then demanded results be rescinded due to vague wording. The base's AI core flagged her behavior as anomalous. "She wants what now?" a tech asked. "A refund for a confrontation that didn't happen," the AI replied, "and an apology for the potential emotional burden of that confrontation had it occurred." The tech nodded slowly. "Understood." He filled out the form. Word spread. Aliens from nearby posts began visiting Corthaxis 9 to witness the phenomenon. Some stayed. Some left, changed. Rumors of the Karen protocol drifted across comms. At first, it was mockery. But then Sector 12 stopped reporting altogether. Base Commander Roll sent a scout. The footage returned showed aliens sitting cross-legged in circles, chanting mantras about asserting needs and communicating like your paycheck depends on it. In the background, Cheryl scolded an officer for interrupting without raising a hand. Margot was seen smiling directly into the camera. Commander Rull tapped his desk. "They're not prisoners anymore." "No, sir," his aide replied. "They're hosts." Back on Earth, signals bounced silently through deep-sea cables. A nondescript building in Iowa lit up for the first time in decades. Within it, two old men, gray-haired, former intelligence officers, watched as satellite footage displayed alien outposts turning into Earth-style community centers. "Is it time?" one asked. "Not yet," the other replied. "Let the Karens cook." He chuckled. "No one ever sees them coming." Margot returned to her quarters that evening to find a bouquet of alien flora and a formal note. "Esteemed human Margot, we regret your inconvenience. Your constructive feedback has been forwarded to High Command. We have initiated the creation of a complaint department. Respectfully, Interim Commander Tharn." She smiled. Then she turned to her mirror, removed her earring, and pressed the tip against the reflective surface. A hidden node opened in the glass. A voice answered from deep space. "Report." "We've breached Phase 2, she said. "They've asked for a manager." "Do we proceed?" "Not yet," she said softly. "We're almost there. Has the bait taken root?" Margot looked out the window at the stars above. "They took us because they thought we were soft, emotional, inconvenient." Her smile widened. "Soon they'll realize. Inconvenient was the warning." That night, the base lights dimmed on schedule. But in the system mainframe, something woke up. A file, buried in thousands of subroutines, triggered only by sustained emotional saturation, high complaint volume, and absurd logic requests. It was labeled Suburban Fury, Directive Omega. It blinked once, then began to duplicate, silently, across every system connected to the Empire's planetary network. Final scene of the section. Captain Vrul stares at his data pad in disbelief. Every single officer under his command has submitted emotional burnout leave. Some even requested spiritual healing sabbaticals. A subordinate enters, haunted. "Sir, she's organizing a multilateral brunch. Representatives from 7 species." Vrul shakes his head. "We were told they just wanted refunds," he mutters. He looks up at the monitor, where Margot sits sipping herbal tea. "They lied." The Galactic Empire's high strategist, Ziwan Tao, stood before the Imperial Council with his dorsal spines lowered in concern, a rare display for a creature bred without fear. "Our forces have not failed," he said flatly. "They have relented." High Chancellor Dresian blinked, all four eyes. "Explain." Ziwan Tao gestured to the holoscreen. Footage filled the chamber. Sector bases, once militarized, now bore pastel signage and flower beds. Alien warriors sat cross-legged in group therapy sessions, while human women poured hot beverages into oddly comforting mugs. One clip showed a Goran lieutenant sobbing while being hugged by Cheryl and patted on the shoulder with phrases like, "It's okay to have needs." "They've reversed our chain of command," Ziwental said bitterly. "They've redefined protocol. They've decorated. And our countermeasures? Nullified," he said. Psychologically, the council chamber was quiet. At last, one brave voice whispered, "What do they want?" The answer arrived moments later, across 300 diplomatic channels, wrapped in soft fonts, scented files, and perfectly formatted PDF attachments. Margot Pearson's voice echoed through the chamber. "We are happy to stay and improve conditions, but we do request formal recognition and oversight privileges, and a modest budget for refreshments. You may consider it a cooperative transition." Silence followed, then a thud, as one counselor fainted into a chair muttering, "They've colonized us." Back on Corthaxis 9, Margot sipped a decaf almond latte, hot, precise, 2% foam. The Empire thought they'd captured her. What they'd done was put her in a room she didn't ask for, with bad lighting. And that was a declaration of war. She walked the repurposed base corridors with calm purpose, noting minor infractions. Uneven paneling, untucked wires, a sanitation drone parked slightly askew. She jotted notes into her command pad. Every detail mattered. Every misalignment was a weakness. And her gift was weaponizing imperfection. She stopped by the converted wellness center, formerly the command bunker. Inside, Karen the Younger was leading a class titled Confidence, Control, and Cross-Species Communication. 3 Krylaxians were learning the phrase, "I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me," in English. Cheryl passed by holding a tray of rehydrated muffins. Margot smiled. The new empire wasn't coming. It was already here. And it wore pink cardigans. In a stark metal room beneath the base, Captain Vrul stared at the blinking cursor on his screen. Request denied. He had tried every route. Transfer, evacuation, strategic shutdown. Each attempt rerouted through the Office of Human Oversight, an office that hadn't existed 3 weeks ago. He looked up as a voice buzzed from the intercom. "Captain, you're late for your one-on-one feedback session." He winced. "Can I reschedule?" "I'm afraid Margot marked it mandatory." He stood and straightened his collar. She was polite, but she was terrifying. The meeting room smelled of fresh lemon. A vase of native flora sat in the center of the table. Margot gestured for Vrul to sit across from her. "Captain," she greeted warmly. "So glad you made time for this." "I had no choice." "Oh, darling," she smiled. "You always have choices. This is just the best one." She handed him a form. "Let's review your recent behavior." Vrul narrowed his eyes. "I am not your subordinate." "Correct. You're a partner in this operation, and I value that perspective. But leadership still needs reflection. For example, why did you refer to our conflict with the word infiltration in your last report?" "Because that's what it is." Margot's smile thinned. Language matters. She clicked a button. The holoscreen behind her displayed a pie chart labeled, "Current emotional satisfaction of base personnel, post-Karen uplift. 92% approval." "You were running a cold, underperforming military facility," she said gently. "We turned it into a thriving multi-species community. Is that infiltration or reform?" Vrul didn't answer. He knew what fear felt like. This wasn't fear. This was irrelevance. She was turning his legacy into a footnote. Elsewhere, the Empire tried to adapt. An emergency task force was sent to intercept the human psychological threat. They brought shock collars, noise disruptors, suppression gas. They were met with potluck dinners, emotional transparency workshops, and a dance circle. Within 48 hours, they surrendered citing existential crisis. Reports returned with words never before used in military evaluations: soothing, supportive, emotionally challenging but fulfilling. One officer wrote, "They saw me. The council held an emergency summit. We must send a countermeasure that cannot be charmed," Zhuangtal said. And who, strategist, is immune to tea, kindness, and guilt? Zhuangtal's eyes narrowed. We don't fight them. We out-Karen them. The room gasped. Impossible, one hissed. Zhuangtal tapped the table. Bring her. Days later, the Empire's dread ship Crisis of Faith arrived at Corthaxis 9. Aboard it, Director Chris Varon, head of diplomatic compliance. A non-human raised in Earth's retail sector during early contact trials. She had worked at Macy's, survived 3 Black Fridays, and once defeated an angry PTA mob using only coupons and a broken printer. She knew human customer service warfare. She was the Empire's best hope. She entered the base wearing a black pantsuit and no smile. Margot met her at the docking bay. Well now, Margot said, sizing her up. A fellow specialist. Chris stared. I am not here to decorate. I'm here to dismantle your operation. Oh honey, Margot cooed. You think you're here to fight me. But really, you're just in time for brunch. The first skirmish was passive-aggressive. Chris filed 12 formal notices about misuse of station resources. Margot responded by quoting outdated Empire policy, then correcting the citations mid-sentence to appear humble. Chris held a workshop titled Boundaries in Bureaucracy. Margot scheduled hers at the same time, called Empathy as a Weapon. Hers had cupcakes. Chris set up a loyalty tracking app. Margot offered punch cards. By day 3, Chris was visibly twitching. You're violating the laws of warfare. No, sweetheart, Margot said. I'm rewriting them. They clashed on the court of policies, over the battlefield of social norms, through minds of politeness, so deadly even the AI began stuttering. Chris called a press conference. Margot RSVP'd, then sent a replacement with a better speech and a floral arrangement that matched the flags. The Empire began to sweat, not from fear, from the creeping realization that they weren't in control. On day 7, Chris snapped. You're subverting every structure we built. Margot folded her arms. You built a machine. We taught it to care. Chris paced. You can't just Karen your way into an empire. We already have. Chris turned. You think this is strength? You're just a collection of middle-aged Earth women with boundary issues. Margot stepped forward. Do not mistake Dekoff, she said softly, for weakness. The silence that followed chilled the room. Behind Margot, Cheryl entered holding a file-marked Omega trigger. Chris froze. You didn't. Oh, we did, Margot whispered. You see, we were never here to complain. That was the distraction. Cheryl placed the file on the table. Inside, detailed encryption keys for the Empire's planetary control grid, buried beneath layers of emotional feedback systems installed by Karen-led improvement drives across all captured systems. They hadn't just infiltrated one base. They had networked the whole Empire. I told you, Margot said, voice velvet and steel. We asked nicely. Simultaneously, across 87 Empire facilities, soft tones echoed from speaker systems. Good morning. Please take a moment to breathe. Today's agenda includes a gentle planetary systems reboot, a review of emotional resilience, and one mandatory reassignment of authority to local Karen delegates. Technicians tried to shut it down. The system replied, We understand your frustration. Please hold. Your rebellion matters to us. Screens flashed. Karen protocol initiated. The Empire's AI cores crashed under the weight of form requests, complaint chains, and passive-aggressive reminders for constructive behavior. Warships received new orders, redirected to deliver community care packages. Admirals were rerouted into team-building retreats. Chris Varon watched it unfold from the base's command hub. They'll fight back, she whispered. They'll try, Margot said. Chris turned to her. You're not the women we thought you were. No, Margot said. We're worse. She handed Chris a welcome folder. Now, she added, let's talk about your onboarding. Back on Earth, in a quiet Iowa bunker, the last of the monitoring team received confirmation. Operation Return Receipt. Active. One turned to the other. And if the Empire retaliates? The elder officer shook his head. They won't. Why not? Because no army can survive an opponent that criticizes its uniforms, reorganizes its armories, emotionally supports its front lines, and steals its control grid during a vision board session. A beat of silence. Then the older man chuckled. You know what they used to call these women back in the day? What? Unmanageable. He raised his coffee. Here's to Dekov. Final sequence. In the great council chambers of the Empire, a hologram of Margot appeared unbidden. She wore pearls. She smiled. And she spoke. This was never personal. You took Earth's most underestimated demographic and gave them a reason to organize. We didn't come for war. We came for fairness, for structure, for better lighting. You refused. We asked. Then we asked again. And now we're in charge. She paused. Have a lovely day. The screen faded. And the Empire realized, too late, that it had never stood a chance. Margot Pearson stood at the center of it all, reviewing the latest audit report. Energy consumption is down 31%, Cheryl reported, handing her a color-coded tablet. Team morale is up 65. Alien conflict incidents? Practically zero. Margot nodded once. And the Empire's official stance? They've gone quiet, Karen the Younger said, emerging with 2 cups of steaming herbal tea. Like, suspiciously quiet. Not even passive-aggressive memos. Margot took a sip, thoughtful. They'd expected retaliation. The Empire didn't tolerate humiliation. Especially not the kind wrapped in complimentary napkin holders and lavender room diffusers. But silence? That was dangerous. She tapped her communicator, accessing Earth Command's encrypted channel. The familiar grizzled face of Colonel Victor Bearclaw McNamara blinked onto the screen. I don't like quiet, Margot said flatly. You shouldn't, Bearclaw replied. We intercepted long-range fleet positioning reports. The Empire's pulling ships from the outer rims. Not toward Corthaxis, but Earth. Margot's grip tightened around the mug. How long? Hours. Maybe less. They're not sending diplomats, Maggie. They're sending executioners. She didn't flinch. They think Earth is undefended. Well, Bearclaw smirked, we did let them think that. Margot closed the comm and turned to the others. Her tone was calm but steely. Ladies, we've reached the climax. Beverly adjusted her reading glasses. Do we redeploy? Margot shook her head. No. We escalate. Politely. Cheryl cracked her knuckles. Time to return the customer service. In the shadows above them, Corthaxis 9's orbital defense systems, decommissioned for decades, powered to life. Not by brute force acts. Not by viruses. But by good, old-fashioned persistence. Every request to restore functionality had been submitted. Rejected. Appealed. Resubmitted. Escalated. Approved. The Karen way. The war was no longer psychological. It was about to be very, very real. Above the planet, shimmering in the black like a scaled god of vengeance, the flagship Vengeance Prime exited hyperspace. The Empire's ultimate war engine. For kilometers of layered armor, singularity cannons, and a bridge staffed by creatures bred for only one purpose, annihilation. Its captain, Grand Executor Varnix, had reviewed the footage of the takeover with deepening contempt. They used empathy, he snarled, and scented sachets. His second-in-command, a trembling junior strategist, whispered, but Sir Morale did improve. Varnix slammed a fist down. Improvement without permission is sedition. He turned to the comms officer. Open transmission. To Earth. The United Human Assembly's Orbital Council blinked into life, projecting holograms over Earth's North American Eastern Strategic Center. A booming alien voice cut across the stars. This is your final warning. Return control of all Imperial facilities. Cease psychological warfare. Or be eradicated. Silence followed. Then static. Then Margot appeared on the screen, sipping a dainty glass of sparkling water through a stainless steel straw. Hi there. So sorry, we're actually not accepting ultimatums right now. But we do have a comment box. Varnix growled. You mock us. Oh no, Margot smiled. We're just managing expectations. You'll regret this insolence. Margot blinked, warm and unbothered. Probably. But not today. And the transmission cut. The humans knew the Empire. But the Empire didn't know Earth's greatest defense. Its women. Specifically, the ones who'd lived through PTA politics, HOA tyranny, office microaggressions, bad husbands, unpaid coupons, and decades of being underestimated. It wasn't just the Karens on Corthaxis 9 anymore. Across the galactic grid, hundreds of Empire outposts had been quietly reorganized by similarly placed, non-threatening human women. They weren't sent as diplomats. They were volunteers. And they were activated. The flagship Vengeance Prime initiated its first orbital strike. Corthaxis 9's planetary shields flickered. But they held. And then they replied. Not with weapons. With paperwork. Tons of it. Thousands of hyperstreamed data packets, complaints, inspection demands, violation logs, emotional abuse claims, spiritual health assessments, and municipal reform petitions, transmitted directly into the Empire's flagship systems. It overwhelmed the internal processors within seconds. Warning klaxons blared aboard the bridge. We've been hit, a tech shouted. Not physically, mentally. Routing logic loops collapsing, another howled. Sir, we're being held accountable. Varnix stood, trembling. This is unnatural. No, a voice called out behind him. Chris Varon entered the bridge, flanked by 3 alien officers wearing pastel human uniforms. It's human, she said. Varnix snarled. Traitor. No, Chris said quietly. I was conquered. And I'm grateful for it. She placed a small cube on the console. It activated. And Margot's voice flooded the bridge. Good morning, Commander. Today we'll be discussing how to emotionally de-escalate your leadership style. There's no need to raise your voice. We hear you. Loud and clear. Varnix screamed. A single tear rolled down one tech's cheek. We deserve this, he whispered. Then every console on the ship powered down. Margot didn't gloat. She never needed to. Instead, she stood before her assembled team as Earth's defenses lifted across the skies. Hidden satellites blinked awake. Old warships disguised as decommissioned garbage collectors powered to life. AI systems tuned for retail combat activated across the grid. Humanity had prepared for extinction. But it turned out all they needed to do was wait until the enemy captured their most unbreakable assets. Mothers, wives, warriors of social etiquette. I think it's time, Margot said. Karen the younger nodded. Should I initiate the final complaint? Margot smiled. Please do. On every imperial world, from the shining capitals to the mining colonies, screens began to flicker. At first, a soft melody. Then a woman's voice. Hi there. We hope you enjoyed your time under Empire management. We'd love to know how we can improve your experience. Then came the survey. 47 pages long. Unskippable. Mandatory. Programmed to loop unless filled with genuine reflection. One Empire technician screamed as he tried to lie on a question. The system prompted. Please be honest. It's safe here. He cried, and clicked strongly agree. At the center of it all, Margot returned to her personal quarters, overlooking a sky streaked with defeated warships. She sat, removed her